Good day, good day. We shall call this part 2. Hopefully you caught part 1. If not, look down in the description of this video. I'm going to try to not make this one super long as I'm on my treadmill here, so you have to just take the information. I know there's noise and everything, but hopefully you can get past that to harness and to receive your remedy for 2022. I have followed through on my promise of providing remedy. One thing I'll say I noticed is that we can continue to hand out pieces of remedy and what have you to the public. We can continue to inundate you with much information, books, resources, and what have you, but what it's going to come down to is you getting off the couch, putting down the video games, even ceasing the constant YouTube search for your remedy. You have to find someone that you trust, someone that is a good teacher, that can break things down for you, and that can provide you with the resources and sources. But you're inevitably going to have to do something yourself. There's 50 states here, and each has a variation involving a legality or the legality. And so this is not cookie cutter. With that being said, as I come through providing you with these remedies, it's going to be on you to take them and do something with it. All right. So off of that soapbox, if you have not gotten the higher process, I suggest that you get that done. What are you waiting for? Why are you procrastinating? Get it done. All right, so let's go on with remedy part 2. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And so at this particular point in time, at this juncture, in this paradigm, at least involving myself, I find myself a bit frustrated, as I conveyed on the part 1 here, because I have to, say we have to take a little ownership of the fact that, most of us are starting late in the game, and we're fed up, but we're not sure at what or for what reason. And now some of us, it's coming to light, the light is coming on. And so, we've been taken through the ringer, as it were. We've been scoffed at, as it were. We've been teased, we've been called all kinds of different names, domestic relation titles by the state workers, etc., etc. We've been all kinds of unfavorable situations, right? I'm sure you share in those. And this is all because of ignorance. My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, for what they do not know. All right? And we are no exception. With that being said, it's time to come out of ignorance, whether willful or whether it's inflicted upon you. It's time to come out. All right? It's time to let the people go, as it were. I won't say let my people, but I'll say let the people go. All right, it's time to come out of destruction. And there is remedy, and I will present that remedy here for you today. In the scripture, there is a parable, I'll say, of a man that went by the name of Yeshua. And this parable talks about his understanding and understanding of what we know today as the law. However, in the account, in this parable of Yeshua, in the one that I am referring to, well, first of all, he started off as a young boy, a young lad, and he started off in the temple teaching. What was he teaching? He was teaching the law. And it says that the priests of that day were astounded at his level of comprehension. He was very astute, but yet he came from nothing, as the account states. He came from Nazareth, which were merely carpenters, tradesmen, if you will. In fact, it says that Joseph, his father, his adoptive father, was in fact a carpenter, a tradesman. How many of you know that the trades are under attack today? And that's where I come in, because the universe has set me here to restore the trades. And so I do this every day. If you're interested in the trades, whether it takes you relocating to a city or state near me, if you're interested, look me up. Great pay, shameless plug there. But we must restore the trades. Why? Because the trades are what establish the infrastructure of our individual, private society, without which big government and big business take over. You may notice the landscape is changing, where you're finding the erecting of large town centers, cookie cutter with apartments, stores, all in one location. Why do you think this is happening? What time do you think we are in? But I digress. Yeshua, from a young boy, as the parable goes, was teaching the older men, the men of renown, the learned men, the high priest of the day, the law. How does that happen? He didn't go to Harvard, Yale. He wasn't from an Ivy League school. He was a mere Nazarene, or from Nazareth. Unlearned men, tradesmen only, in the trade skills, carpentry. But yet he is teaching the men of old, the men of renown, the high priest, the law. In our day, it would be the attorney general, perhaps the legislature, sitting in the halls of the Capitol as a young boy, articulating and conveying with conviction the law. I'll be your huckleberry. Anyhow, and as the parables continue in the New Testament, you'll find another account where this same Yeshua, one day, with much conviction and much zeal and boldness, goes into the temple. Today, the temple is not what you think it is. The temple of the high priest, the progenitors, the astute, the aristocratic families, the line. Remember, the high priest, the Levites, were a select aristocratic family, right? And they created the law, the legislative body of the day, right? And this law would govern over the people harshly. And there was a lot of pride in this position as a Levite, as the temple guard, the temple priest. You know, they wore a particular uniform, as it were, a robe perhaps, you know, and very pompous and prideful people. Okay? And they knew the law. And they weren't afraid to let you know that you were wrong. And so Yeshua, again, goes into the temple on this particular day and notices the money changing, it says. The unscrupulous taxation and subsequent imprisonment of those who are in debt, who can't afford to pay. But they couldn't afford to pay because these unscrupulous members, these aristocratic families and their ilk, were tipping the scales unfavorably, as I stated before, in regards to my disdain, participating in the legalities of the day and getting little remedy or recourse. And he noticed this, and it enraged him and incited in him something. And he grew a righteous indignation, and he began to whip out of the temple these participants, these aristocratic families, these legal men of the day who used contracts and law to strip the people of their rights and liberties, their freedoms. And he began to whip them out. He began to kick their butt with the law. He began to quote, as he had done many times in the temple as a young boy. Now he's perhaps been sawing his tables in his father's carpenter shop. Muscles have become emboldened and bigger, and he's more cut, you know. He probably wasn't fat and out of shape like us Midwesterners, you know, all the cheese we eat, the Packer fans and what have you, right? He was a carpenter. He was lifting tree logs and what have you, right? Becoming, as it were, a New Testament type of Samson, right? And so he's manhandling these high priests and these tax collectors, and that typically would hang together. They were both looked at unfavorably by the people, by the laity. And he not only whipped them out, as the parable goes, but he turned over. Listen to the terminology. What does the term attorney mean? Attorney means to turn over. To turn over. Yeshua became, as it were, the attorney. Or he used attorney-like activities, turning something over in order to exact a type of condemnation and conviction upon the leaders, the legal leaders of the day. How many of you know that this account is merely figurative? It's a metaphor. Because what it's going to take for us today in our paradigm, 2,000 plus years later from this parable, is we're going to have to start knowing how to whip out these money changers, these banksters, as it were, out of the temple being the courtroom where the high priest sits on his throne and comes from a good line, aristocratic line. We're going to have to learn how to do that, but it's not with bombs, it's not with guns, it's not with any military might, it's not, none of that. None of that. We don't encourage any violence. It is not necessary. And Yeshua, although painted in this parable as a violent act, it was meant to be merely metaphoric and representative. And so, you know, kind of like your opponent, you know, you whip your opponent with academia, or in the sports, athleticism, or in the Olympics, you know. There's no riot, there's no incitement of danger or violence or whatever. Not when you have an intellect, when you are studied and learned. And so with that being said, this is what we must employ today. And we must turn over the tables, turn the tables, as it were. You ever heard that analogy, that phrase? That he or she turned the tables on their opponent, meaning it's no fun when the rabbit has got the gun. It's no fun when we figure the game out and we begin to fight back or volley back the ball across the net and across the court. Quote unquote, court. Emphasis on court. It's no fun when the rabbit has the gun. So, with that being said, KnowledgeWell Media right here we have remedy, and we have provided that remedy. You take this two-part series, or maybe more, and you use what it is that I am giving to you freely. However, feel free to donate. $, AmericanConsulate. Yeah, that should be the Cash App. Look in the description of this video and others for donating purposes. Now, here it is. Let's bring this home quick, fast, and in a hurry. Remedy. We have to know how to turn the tables. We have to know how to whip them at their own game. Now, if you've been around here for any amount of time, then you know that I also teach trust law. Trust law has to do with a dichotomy. I should say a bifurcation, meaning a splitting, okay, into branches or tranches, I think they're called, or something to that effect, where you take the legal title and equity title and you separate them, and you give the legal title to the trustee, because legal title suggests control. And then you take the other title, which is the equitable title, which is the right to use, to beneficial use, to ownership of property, the interest in property. That goes with the equitable title. And you give that to the beneficiaries of the trust. And that's a bifurcation, because this jacket, for demonstration purposes, is property. It belongs to me. It belongs to no other but me. That means, since it is mine, I have two titles. Every piece of property has at least two titles. I have legal title of this jacket. That means that I have the right to determine what happens to it. I have the right to manage it, to administer it. If I want to give it away, if I want to sell it, I have that right. That's legal title. I am entitled to this property. I also have beneficial and equitable interest title to this property, wherein I can wear it. It can keep me warm, it can insulate me. But guess what? I can also rent it if I want to. I can transfer and assign it to someone else for profit, for interest payments. I can rent this out for a week straight to someone that doesn't have it or that likes the design. And I can make interest off of what I paid. If I paid $30 for it, I can rent this out for $2 a day during the winter months and make $2 per day for a full week, and that would be my profit, because I paid $30, but I'm going to make $14. You get it? That's equitable interest. And so with that being said, I got to end this up here quickly. When we come to the understanding of your rights, your property rights, it works the same way involving their courts. If you recall, I've done a couple studies on Dred v. Scott. What was the real issue with Scott suing his slave master in 1857? The real issue was that he had, in accordance with the legal system, in accordance with what the Supreme Court ruled, he had no right to benefit. That should put up a flag for you. There's two titles. One goes to the trustee, one goes to the beneficiary. The equitable title goes to the beneficiary. He could not benefit from the use of the courts because he was not considered a citizen. He was considered a slave, a part of, as Justice Taney says in Dred Scott, a member of an unfortunate race. They were not part of the aristocratic family. They were not part of the colonial system, the colonizers that came over here on this front. Therefore, the Founding Fathers had not written him or his type into the Constitution or protected them with political and civil rights. He was not considered a citizen, nor was he intended to be by the Constitution. And so Justice Taney, in the Dred v. Scott case, had no choice, because what is the purpose of the judiciary, of the third branch of government? It is to merely interpret, not to rewrite policy, but to merely interpret what the legislature has already laid down and held, right? And so he had no choice. He had to interpret what was the intent of the founding fathers, right? When it comes to the courts, citizenship, rights, civil rights, political rights. And so he held, as he should have, regardless of how you feel about it, they cannot use emotion, because that is not part of their delegation of authority by the Constitution. So he did correctly in accordance with the Constitution, said, Dred Scott, I feel for you, man. However, I cannot allow my emotions to violate the separation of powers. I'm called to merely interpret what the founding fathers have codified. And by their codification, you're not written in, my man. You are not part of the Lamb's Book of Life. Your name is not here, and therefore depart from me. I never knew you. And this was the plight of Dred Scott. Now, so what does that tell us in closing? That Dred Scott did not have an equitable title to the rights that the regular citizens of the United States had. He did not have entitlement to the civil and political rights as a citizen of the United States. But guess what? In closing, in 1868, there came about a certain amendment to the Constitution. I need you to hear me, listen, and absorb what I'm about to tell you. This is Remedy 2022, as promised. Do something with it, or not. In 1868, there was an addition to the Constitution. It's known as the 14th Amendment, which in effect, and it is claimed that the 14th Amendment now opens the floodgates for a new type of citizen, a new U.S. person. Now, any individual, any U.S. born individual with citizenship rights has the right to come into the courts. Because now you have a new juridical legal personality that gives you a capacity that the law can now see you, the American law system can now see you, and now you are no longer considered a most unfortunate race, a Negro, a slave. Now you can come into the holiest of holies, my man and my woman. It's yours. Come on in. But you better know how to use the proper court. And with that, we're going to end for the day. I'll probably do a part 3 because we need to discuss the proper courts and how to raise the proper courts. If you've been paying attention, I did do a video on this maybe a week or 2 ago, so you might want to look back for cheat notes. But it's been 24, 04, 05, 06 seconds, and I hope you picked up what I put down. This is Remedy. This is your Bible. And like Yeshua, it's time to turn over the tables and whip them at their own game. Courtney, signing out.